There is a very famous American comedy sketch, and I can't remember what the show is from, but the scene is set in a nice department store when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this massive car that's hot dog shaped smashes straight through the front of the building. Everyone's like, "Oh my god, what happened here?" And of course, out of nowhere, there's this guy suddenly in the crowd in a hot dog costume saying, "I know, what a disaster. We must find the person responsible for this." And everyone's like, "Well, hold on, is it could it be you?" um Here's the thing, that's not technically what's happening in the Conservative Party. Technically, what is now happening is that there's probably one person who isn't dressed up in the crowd who saw this accident happen. And the thing is, everyone's dressed up, bar probably like one person, this hot dog costume, and they're all pointing fingers, accusing who was to blame for this, well, absolutely catastrophic defeat. And trust me, they are still very, very much in the process of mourning, shall we say, at this moment in time. But I think they are pretty much, at this point, maybe taking the weekend off. I would have expected more stuff to happen. If you saw, I think it was the Good Morning Britain, where out of nowhere, Steve Baker thought he'd been asked a question by George Osborne when it was Ed Balls asking him for him, and launched into an absolute scathing rebuke, blaming him for the seismic Tory defeats. I mean, he even went on to blame Ed Balls for I don't know what it was, the torture or something like that. And I think I really struggle to think of anything from the past 14 years where Steve Baker has had anything to say about torture or anything like that for the past 14 years. He didn't went all the way back to like 1911 for like the National Insurance Act. But there you go. And George Osborne, I think, maybe got it right. Where he said, well, you can see what the problem is of our party right there. And bear in mind, George Osborne also partly responsible. He shouldn't, uh, you know, be excusing himself from the disaster. But yeah, perfect example, really, of part of the problem of the Tory party. Right there. But George Osborne not to blame as well. But today we are looking to have a look at this, where we've now got a report from senior Tory sources who are incredibly happy that Liz Truss lost her seat, but also not only blame Truss, but also Brexit for the party's absolutely catastrophic general election defeat, as well as a couple of other things as well. But we'll get into those as we go on through the article. So, thank you very much, like I say, to all those people who do help and support the channel. Like I say, do click on the like, the share button. If you are new, click the subscribe button as well. And of course, down below, there's the link to the Patreon page. There's a Buy Me Coffee link. There's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So thank you very much to everyone who does help support the channel. And of course, on we go to today's Jackanory Tory story. So, this came from the Eye, and it's a title of I'm So Happy Truss Loss. Tory blames ex-PM and Brexit for catastrophic defeat. So, Truss's disastrous premiership, the Tory gambling scandal, and Brexit are all to blame for the Conservatives' collapse in the general election, senior party sources have now claimed. As the post-mortem into the worst performance in the party's histories begin, fingers are already being pointed in the direction of the former Prime Minister as being largely responsible for the disproportionate outcome. Oh, sorry, for the disappointing outcome, shall we say. Again, don't get me wrong. Truss does bear a lot of the blame, but her ideology is still shared by many of the Tory MPs, even by some extent by Rishi Sunak himself, who said, I would love to do all that stuff when, they were campaigning against each other for Tory leadership, but we can't do that stuff at the moment. But it was stuff that he even said himself would like to do. He was not, distancing himself from that, part too much. And there are still people in the Tory party who are absolutely ideologically fixed that what Truss did was correct, but she just did it wrong. you know, um, it's the old, adage of, we see on the left quite a lot. You don't understand. Communism works, but when it was done in the, when you point to, the examples, where it has gone wrong, well, that wasn't real communism. It's exactly the same now we're seeing in the Conservative Party. Well, that wasn't real conservatism. So anyway, on to this. So these self-inflicted errors during the election campaign, and the UK's departure from the European Union, and this is interesting, also pointing the blame at CCHQ, refusal to now properly fund digital attack adverts, were also cited as being behind the party's historic defeat at the ballot box. That's interesting because that's the first time I'm hearing this. So CCHQ's refusal to properly fund digital attack adverts. But bear in mind, throughout the campaign, we did see some digital ads, but they almost failed every single time. I put some examples as the campaign was running. The egg one, if you remember that was taken down almost incredibly quickly. Because they were putting them out, and it's as if no thought had gone into them about what they were saying and what exactly they were trying to attack. But there you go. Maybe we'll get more about this in the future. Like I say, I fully expect there to be at least 2 or 3, shall we say, big post-mortem defeat investigations into this. You're not just going to get one stepping stones like you did after 1997. I think you'll get probably 2 or even 3. And it will be, Tory MPs, or at least those at the left, will take their pick of which one they want to do. So, reacting to the news that the Tories had lost over 250 seats, a now former minister told the Eye that the defeat could be traced back to 3 overarching issues. He said, first, there was the Chris Pincher scandal, who was accused of groping. It led to the final downfall of Boris Johnson and the start of all the strife and party division. I'd argue that it had been long going on before that, but, there you go. Then, of course, you had the Liz Truss catastrophe, the source said. I could not be happier that she has now lost her seat. It is the best possible thing for the Conservatives. I almost say it was now worth losing the election in the manner that we did, just so it meant losing her seat. How can she claim to be a proper Conservative when she can't even get elected in the safest Tory seat in the country? She will probably try and blame the deep state for getting booted out. The Conservative also added that the third issue was the allegation that the Conservatives' campaign director, Tony Lee, had also gambled on the date of the Tory election. He said that really hit the campaign. It was an absolute awful for morale, the source said. It really knocked the wind out of the sails. It really hit the activists in our local area. It completely alienated a lot of them. Obviously, D-Day didn't help. Kind of funny that he says that the Gamblegate had a bigger impact than the D-Day stuff. But there you go. I think D-Day, if Gamblegate didn't happen, I think the D-Day stuff would have dominated even more. I think that would have continued to rumble on. Gamblegate, of course, didn't help them. But if that had never happened, I think the D-Day stuff would have still sunk them. They'd still be in, I think, the exact same position. And this is where we got one. Another red wall Tory who lost their seat also blamed the failure of the Conservative headquarters to fund digital attack adverts properly. He said, "Where were the attacks on Labour's record? Why was it all left to Ross Kempsell, Boris Johnson's former aide, to do it off his own back? We should have been all doing that from the start and pumping it out consistently." And again, what are you going to run on Labour's record? Because if you are going to run on the last time they were in power, where we had, lower rates of poverty for children and pensioners, the NHS waiting times were better. People were earning sort of quite a lot more than they were now. Are you going to run on that time? Last time Labour in office? But there you go. Also, again, we're gonna have to try and find these ads. Maybe I have to try and track some of those down, as to what some of those were. But you can't really attack Labour for Jeremy Corbyn, especially when he's no longer in the party. We saw that, of course, with the attack ad with Keir Starmer, Kim Jong Un, Putin, and I think Xi. Wasn't very good. Didn't go over very well. Even other Tories were pointing out that's a bad attack ad. So maybe that was one of those. Again, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to try and track some of those down. But another former Tory advisor also insisted that the downfall of the party was not a result of any single issue, but a collection of failures. Yeah. I would say this as well. If you look at the downfall of the Tory party, it is not a single issue. It is not, Boris Johnson happened and then it all went a bit wrong. It had been multiple things that had just been building and building and building up for years within the party, and it all just came tumbling down on them. It was like playing Jenga. They were just knocking parts out of the Jenga tower out, and sooner or later, if you ever play Jenga, the tower is going to come down. The tower is going to come down. Ultimately, obviously, Rishi Sunak was like the final one. And of course, when he came to sort of take his bricks out, the tower came tumbling down completely. But anyway, this is what this former Tory advisor had to say. He said there has now been a complete perfect storm that has led up to this point, the source said. If you had said in 2019 that Labour would get a supermajority, people have said you were mad. Brexit legitimised a very fringe element of the party becoming mainstream. We have become ungovernable. You can trace that volatility back to that point. He's not wrong. Again, that's not wrong. Brexit did legitimise a fringe party element that had been kept out there. All those insane Eurosceptics, the free market fundamentalists, that once Brexit came in were then legitimised and they started being listened to as if they were, serious actors. People like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who previously kept to the fringe of the party as someone who was a lunatic and seen shouldn't really be brought in to the party, governing, so say, section. But Brexit enabled him to sort of do that and legitimized him. It legitimized a lot of them to be brought in. So he's not wrong in saying that Brexit does also play a large part, I would say, in their downfall as well. But yeah. So the finger pointing still continues. No doubt more stuff will come. I'm very shocked that Conservative Home has been very, very, very quiet. Very, very quiet. But hey, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, we'll get the flood of articles from Conservative Home. But as always, like I say, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time. So until then, we'll see you all very soon.